Hey, Lauren. Uh,
Mary,
we're
how are you?
we're back. I've missed you, and I think in part because we didn't do a show for 2 weeks, which is rare. The last show we did was Aaron Wilkerson from Carhartt, which feels like ages ago. I just dropped him a note, a belated thank you note for having come on. That was a great show. We had technical issues that week, and I hadn't been able to see the comments and questions. So let's keep an eye out for that this week. If you're commenting or sending questions and we don't see them, dispatch a courier pigeon to me or something to tap me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, I've got questions." So we'll figure it out as we go. But anyway, we are back. We've got a great guest, but let's first catch up on Mary and Lauren's world. We were supposed to meet in person. We've only met in person once, which was last year at Snowflake Summit, I think. And you
Really?
were
Yeah, no, I had to cancel my snowflake plans for a minute. So I got really sick just right beforehand and just ended up having to cancel everything, which
what
is
about
unfortunate. Um, I have I had a lot planned. I did not buy tickets to the Snowflake conference. I was just going to show up outside of it and hire some stripper nurses, and we were going to give away Snowflake health checks or 5-tran health checks, which we're stay tuned. We've got a lot coming with regards to 5-tran health checks and 5-tran what we're doing. Because my goal here in the next couple of months is to peel off as much revenue off of 5-tran as possible. We've already got it in the works. We've already got a couple customers churning. We've got people having community conversations about 5-tran. There's a lot more to come. I'm just getting started. So I was super upset that I wasn't able to go, but a lot of momentum going forward.
Well, one of the not forget revenue, dog eat dog, modern data stack world, where everyone's going after revenue in whatever way they can. I had to deal with you not being there because I had to go to parties and people are like, "Where's your partner in crime, Lauren?" And I had to explain that it wasn't meant to be.
In jail. Yeah, Lauren got arrested.
So but conference season happened. The sort of the two biggest in our industry. I did hear from, again, a lot of Tech Bros viewers and fans who gave good feedback that I haven't shared with you, but we should do some follow-up sort of on how we can grow our following and stuff, which is great to hear. Really useful feedback. Also, we haven't done shit, excuse my language. So but this has all just sort of happened organically, talking about what we want to talk about, and it happens to be within the zeitgeist of what people want to hear. So at some point we will maybe take that feedback in terms of growing, but for now we're just having fun, and people seem to appreciate the honest, frank discussion, especially in a time that social media is fracturing, right? Did you jump on Threads yet? I don't have it in me.
I think Threads, what I'm calling it now, is going to last a week.
A microsecond, yeah.
Well, everyone, it's tied to people's personal Instagram accounts, right? Mm-hmm. So if I see Mary on there, I'm also able to see your personal Instagram. So so people are gonna have their bikini pics on there. They're not gonna be talking about Rust and Copilot and data observability next to their bikini pics, or maybe they will. I don't know. So we'll see what happens.
I'm not convinced. I mean, it could go either way. We'll see, but we'll probably see fairly quickly within a few weeks. I'd say it stands a better chance than the Blue Skies and the Mastodons of the world. I think the mix of personal and professional might not be the issue itself, because again, you quickly identify the profiles that go either way, or that leverage their bikini pics to sell their data product or whatever. So TBD. And as you always remind us, all in the countdown to the upcoming elections. And
what's going to happen? I think that all this platform fracturing, as the elections heat up later this year, and the primaries, and we get into election season next year, who's going to be saying what on what platform?
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But anyways, let's pull our guest on. Let's pull
Yeah,
Petra.
we're gonna get the Euro perspective on all of this. I'm gonna let you introduce the guest because she's your buddy. She'll be my buddy at the end of the hour. Here we go.
Petra's a data engineer, software engineer. She's been in this space for 15 plus years. Actually knows what she's talking about. I enjoy reading everything that she writes on her blog on Medium about what she's working on, what some of the pitfalls are of different tooling and technology she's using. How she's using everything, and I think it's a breath of fresh air in our industry of content, and more content. So, she's based in the Netherlands, originally from Romania, and we're happy to have her on.
And how do you say your last name, Petra?
Hi, everyone. My last name is Leuca, so it's a bit hard to pronounce.
But it's phonetic, yeah. Awesome. Welcome. So happy to have you here. Lauren's told me a lot about you, so I'm excited that we get to have you on. What time is it there? You're outside Amsterdam.
It's 7 in the evening, so almost weekend, as we say.
Yeah. So yeah, adult beverages welcome. I think you're the first guest who's made the effort to ask us that ahead of time. I'm on my coffee because that's all I can handle. Although I did discover a new favorite drink during the Snowflake Summit parties, which is the espresso martini. But I guarantee this is not an espresso martini since it's 11 a.m. for me now. Before we get started with Petra, just hello to a few people. Hi to Val. Martin Seifert, I haven't seen you there before. He's asking how many metaverses would that be? I don't know what that is.
Too many metaverses.
Sorry?
Too many.
Too many, yeah. I mean, the irony of like all this money going into the metaverse, and now it's instead Zuck is just doing a knockoff of Twitter, which is pretty low tech. And then hello to Justin Paprick, who says people will likely have to create a second Insta account. Everybody just wants to talk about threads. We'll get to that. Let's get to Petra first. Go for it, Lauren. You dive in with the question.
So, I wanted to bring you on, and we've chatted here and there for a while. What's going on over in the Netherlands versus what we crazy Americans are doing here with reverse ETL and putting reverse ETL on the blockchain, and writing 10,000 DBT models, having 26 different AWS services running. Like, what are things like over there? And yeah, what's your opinion on all of this, of what you're seeing, in your day to day, and what's going on in the media online?
Okay. So in the Netherlands, things are moving a bit slower compared to the United States. For example, when Hadoop came, everyone was like, oh, we have Hadoop now, we have data lake, but we see already that in the Netherlands, by the time they started implementing data lakes, already migrate to data lake house. So we already implement data lake with schema management in place, with data versioning. And for example, you write a lot about Fivetran, but sincerely, I never saw Fivetran and I never used Fivetran. So there are quite a lot of tools which are maybe more used in the United States compared with the Netherlands. Even today, I saw a post on LinkedIn asking, I'm so curious if the reality is so different from what we see in social media, because we see a lot about Snowflake, about Databricks, but what we see here is that the companies are still using Oracle Teradata, for example, which are now called legacy, which, yeah, in fact, they are not legacy systems. They are just a different data warehouse platform compared with the new ones, which can, of course, run on cloud as well. So if we compare with the United States, I think Europe is moving a bit slower in adopting new technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that nobody's on the cloud over there. I mean, I shouldn't say nobody, but are you working on Google Cloud, or is there like AWS adoption?
Mostly AWS adoption. So also if you look at the job posting and also in the companies I worked for, most of them use AWS. I think the cloud migration just started. So the companies which do use Microsoft, let's say maybe SQL Server, I think they will slowly move towards Azure instead of AWS. But what you see usually in big companies, in corporate, is that they have all of the flavors. So they have different projects running on Azure, different on AWS, and so on.
Sure. What yeah, what are the trends going on right now over there? What is like we it's well treaded ground what's going on here in the US. I think we all know that it's turn things over every 2 years, turn things over every 2 years. But what are the trends? Like what's the buzziest thing going on right now? Is it data mesh? Is it I don't know contracts? Like what's going on and what's actually getting used on the ground in companies?
If I look on LinkedIn, everyone is speaking about moving to cloud and adopting Databricks or Snowflakes. But if I look at my experience, companies, they are still working with other kinds of databases. We even have data warehouses on Postgres, which are good enough for small size of data. And another thing about changing your platform each 2 years, I think this is since the beginning of time. Since I work in the data domain for 15 years already, I think each or 2 or 3 years, the company says, oh, there's a better platform, we should move there. So what you usually see, especially in big companies, is that they have multiple data warehouses developed in multiple platforms. For example, in one of the company I worked for, we had a data warehouse on Oracle, we had one on Teradata, and then they developed one with Hadoop. But you can imagine that the other ones were never decommissioned. They are still up and running even today because they never managed to migrate. And they had important business use cases running on the old platforms.
Yeah, and they never will upgrade probably, or they will eventually. But and I bet the uptime is really fantastic. I bet there's almost no downtime either, which we don't always see on the cloud. But yeah, I've been following your Medium and like things that you write and talk about. You've been doing a project with solar. I'd love to chat through what you're working on and how you're I really think that you have a really good use case on your Medium, which people can go look up for introductory to medium level people can put together a project, and it's a good project to show off. So I would love to hear about what you're working on with that and how that came about.
So basically in the Netherlands, we have solar panels on the roof of our house, and we change our energy contract almost each year. So it's pretty hard to calculate what's the return on the investment. And in order to do that, we need, of course, the data from each energy supplier. We also need to know how much we consumed, how much we produced. And there's also nice that in the Netherlands we netto. So basically, if we produce more than what we consumed, we netto the consumption and we get some money on the remaining production. This is one thing. Another thing is that when you have solar panels, some of the energy will be consumed automatically in the house before it reaches the smart meter. So the data about that consumption is being lost. You don't have that data from the smart meters. So we just wanted to see what's the return on our investment, if it was a good investment on solar panels, and how we use our energy. So basically, I started small with downloading the data from the solar panel website and then getting the data from the smart meters and then integrating it. Started with Postgres. Now it's all full in memory with DuckDB. And the plan is to move back to a more persistent state because at the moment I need to fully recalculate all the data I gather.
Yeah, no, I really like this. So walk me through this. So in the Netherlands, is it mandated that you have a solar panel on your house, or at least where you live?
No, it wasn't. We bought it ourselves. So usually people say you have 8 to 9 years of return of your investment. So we just wanted to see, how they perform, in fact.
Right. This is super cool, and I'm looking through it now. And so here's my thing with solar. Like here in the U.S., it can get a little bit. I don't want to call it scammy. Well, some of the companies are scammy, but like you get tax credits for this, and you can use these tax credits, and nobody is really measuring this very well at all of what they're actually spending, and like are they spending less on, I don't know, like other parts, other things that cost money. Everyone's, a lot of kitchens are on natural gas still. That's not going to change. So people get these solar panels, but they're still paying natural gas. And there's like a 25-year payoff period that a lot of these companies will say, but that's a long time. So I'm curious, like with what you're doing and like the data you're putting together, and you're using a couple of different things, like you mentioned, DuckDB, Plotly, Streamlit. You're putting it together. How are you sharing this with like the solar companies, or is anyone else, like your neighbors or someone down the street, like looked at this? Because this could be pretty big. Because I know here in the U.S., like I don't know, like people don't want like the solar companies. Certain ones might not be happy if people were sharing the data about what they're actually using or not. So I'm curious about like how you're sharing this with people.
In fact, I do not share. I think these insights are for our own use. They're running only inside our house, and maybe the difference is that we do have a smart meter. So most of the people in the Netherlands have a smart meter. And also what you see, there's also Home Assistant, which is an open source tool where you can plug in all the smart things you have inside your house. But that didn't really work for me because the solar panel provider had a different data logger, which is not easy to integrate in Home Assistant. That was one point. And again, you are missing the overview from what you consume without reaching the smart meter. The smart meter. What I did see is that for the smart meter, I use a stick which has an API running where I can collect the data from, and the company providing that stick now are integrating the data from different solar panels providers. So soon they will have it available in their app, but the provider for my solar panels is not yet integrated there. But if you want to see like the historical return on investment, again, it's something quite hard to achieve because you need to know the price of electricity for each energy contract and for each consumption production at day level, maybe hourly level, depending on your pricing and so on. So there are some things which are not possible to be integrated in those kind of apps.
I see Lauren's face. Like, how do we make money from this? How do we make money? Want a partner?
Okay, well, the energy industry, so like I have my own tinfoil hat opinions about how every industry works, or at least the ones I know about. And energy is the funniest to me always. Energy is always, and I'm looking at this from a U.S. perspective, but I think the principles apply in most other countries. It's the most arbitrage because like everyone's selling credits to everybody else, and then the stuff moves forward. And I actually I've made the comparison before about the cloud, which by the way, the cloud is a subset of the energy industry. People don't realize that, but it is
with an environmental impact.
With an environmental impact, right? Who's selling credits and who's discounting stuff here. Here's how data moves in here. Here's how network traffic moves. Like the whole internet is a subset of the energy industry. It's funny that you mentioned environmental impact because I can't remember who it was, but someone was talking about how green their product is because it uses less cloud resources than something else. I can't remember what it was. I saw it like a week ago, and they were going on and talking about how great their how environmentally sound their product is. And what they're doing is they're flying all around the country, going to like conferences and road shows, telling people about how environmentally sound their product is, which maybe
in a private jet.
Net it might save that much, but like flying around the country to tell everybody how green your product is might not be the way to do it. I don't know.
Absolutely. I want to know more about kind of your career progression. Like you're data engineer. I know you can wear many titles or hats, which is kind of, before generative AI was like the most hyped and coveted role for a little while there, a good 6 months to a year in the data industry. How did you get to where you are, and what do you like about it?
Oh, it's a long time ago. So I was in my second year of studying, and I had to get a job, and I found a job for a tester. They were accepting juniors, so I got trained there. I started as a data warehouse tester in telecommunications. Back then, like more than 15 years ago, you had a dedicated testing team. So whatever you see now as data testing in production was in fact done before deploying to production by a testing team and trying to understand what is being developed and deployed. And after that, so that was basically how I entered the data domain. And from there, I moved to PL SQL developer, then data warehouse developer, working on Oracle, Teradata, or Microsoft SQL Server, with what we call traditional tooling like Informatica Power Center and Oracle Warehouse Builder, and of course PL SQL on Oracle. So basically, I kind of, because we speak about the fact that in data, each 2 years, the platform is changing, I also kind of went to different projects depending on the requirement. And I think 6 years ago, I made the switch to Python backend development in web development, and then a bit of data engineering with data streaming. And after 4 years, I moved back to data analytics. And it was a surprise for me to find out what happened in 4 years. Like everyone doing full loads, no data validation, no schema management. And I was a bit overwhelmed about so many things which we used to have in place in the traditional way of working, which nowadays are missing, and which of course have an impact on the level of quality and on the cloud usage and on the money you spend in processing the data. And
Right. What that's really funny. I mean, I know the same thing. I mean, I write blogs about the same thing. Like, you spent this much money on what? Are you out of your mind? Like, here's how this should be done, right? Like, the you really hit a nail on the head, though. I think like no one, like, what does production even mean today? Like everybody, kind of like if you're just making I don't know, a database, data warehouse, you're running some workloads through it, and that's what you're doing. Like, that's automatically production, I guess. So then what's like a testing environment? Like, what is, staging or anything like that? And what I see today is just, one big free for all at a bunch of different companies. And it's really interesting. It's really funny. Like, what do you think caused that in your experience, Petra?
I think that nowadays data is used in more use cases than it used to be used before. So before we used to have a data warehouse, especially for financial reporting. So there it was mandatory to have clean data and accurate data. And then alongside that, maybe you would do some marketing and some logistics and that kind of calculation, but not that much. So the focus was really financial. And nowadays, because we use data everywhere, so analytics doesn't mean anymore only data warehouse and business intelligence, we have the data science part. So there's a need of experimentation. So what we see in fact is that production everyone speaks about in most cases is in fact an experimentation environment where people work with production data from operational systems, but they do not produce data which can be trusted and used by other consumers. It's data which is a result of a certain experiment, of a certain data analysis project, but not really meant to be consumed by other applications.
Sure. No, that makes total sense. I mean, like I see the same thing pretty much everywhere. Um, I also kind of wanted to get into like when we were chatting about how we wanted to tee up the show and what we wanted to talk about. You talked about like women in tech, and that's something Mary and I bring up a number of times. I don't think we've really gotten the European perspective on it or the perspective of people over there yet. Mostly, what we've been talking about is specific to the U.S. But yeah, would love to hear like what your thoughts are on what's going on there, how that is, how it's been the last couple of years, and have that conversation.
Okay, so for me, coming from Romania, so Romania was a communist country, which meant that everyone had to work. So women worked full time. So it wasn't a situation in which women shouldn't be on the work floor. I think that made a bit easier for women to be part of any domain because it was normal to work. There was nothing special about it. So if I look in my years in data warehousing in Romania, I had in fact more women colleagues than men. So in data analysis, in a business requirement or technical analysis, you would see a lot of women rather than men. When I moved to the Netherlands, the situation changed a bit because the Netherlands, the emancipation of women was a bit later in history. So what you see is that women usually don't follow the technical study path, and usually in the tech teams you'll see more men than women. Unfortunately, that creates a strange situation because sometimes you are just the only one in the room, and that raises the opportunity for different situations which are not nice to handle. And I do hope the situation will improve in time.
And have you seen it improve, stagnate, or get worse in the past few years?
I think it depends. So I worked, for example, in a company for a long time, and I personally didn't had much issues there. But then it happened to just be part of a team which wasn't okay or accommodating. I'm not sure if I'm using the correct word. I'm trying to be political correct.
You don't have to be politically correct.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
On the show.
But basically, you see that I had a lot of colleagues who left companies because they were part of teams in which they were not treated nicely. And I myself, for example, went with my colleagues for a meeting with a stakeholder, and he greeted everyone, shook hands, and simply ignored me like I was there. So I was a bit okay. I'm also here. So yeah, you do see this kind of
the basics of like recognizing each other as human beings are not even acknowledged. That's
and this and in your experience and just based on you've been working for 15 years, like I'm guessing when you were a kid at least in Romania, that was still before you grew up in the 80s there, 80s and early 90s as a kid there, I assume, correct? When it was still under the Iron Curtain, as we call it here, but correct? Like,
I was very young when the communist revolution was in Romania, but if I look, and I also wrote on Medium, I have two articles about this, but if I look back then, we did had sexist jokes. I think they are everywhere, and it's a bit hard to fight them. Sometimes you also participate because sometimes it's funny to be funny. So but here in the Netherlands, it was a different level. In one time, my manager told me that if you want, you can come with us at lunch, but we are all men. I was like, so what? Like, it's lunch.
yeah.
So you do. So sometimes it is just happening to, maybe it's bad luck because I did had great teams in which I collaborated greatly and I had a great time. So
as an American who worked in Europe for 7 or 8 years in a different industry in media, I was so taken aback by how this issue, how far behind this issue is. And again, this was France, different than the Netherlands, but like, Western Europe in general likes to portray itself as progressive on so many things. And it was like stepping back into the 1950s when it comes to gender roles. Not that everything is perfect here, far from it. What I've seen is, and I think we've all seen, tell me if you disagree, but over the past year, specifically within data here, where we've gone from being quite flush financially to now, having to think more about reality and financial realities, that what immediately is pushed aside as being top of mind is any diversity and equality initiatives. And even just having been at Snowflake Summit and you look around, not that there were ever a huge percentage of women there, but the numbers for women in data are overall a bit higher than women in tech in general. I mean, it's just all dudes, mostly white dudes, and no discussion amongst anyone of that. Anecdotally, I would say that women aren't doing great. I see a lot of really high stress and anxiety these days among women, because who's on the chopping block when it comes to the layoffs? There's data on this. I should have pulled it up ahead of the show. I didn't. I can post it afterwards, but who's on the chopping block? Women and minorities. There's one company I called out when I saw them. I said, why did you lay off all your women over 40, including 2 women on maternity leave? That's not cool, The person I said that to quickly walked away, being flustered. But yeah, I would say that things aren't great these days.
Well, I think also, and nobody's ever talked about this. Maybe I'll write something up about this, but in all this utilization, or on all this cloud, usage consumption models, that comes out of a budget, right? And so I've seen this throughout my career, the last couple of years, being a consultant and then working places as well. All right, well, you blew up your budget. I've seen plenty of, guys, go back, they're the director of whatever, analytics, data engineering, or, some application team. And it's, we need another 150,000.
There's a lot more room for error.
Yeah, there's a lot more room for error. And then well, if a woman does that, it's all right, well, can she really handle the team? We, gave her a budget of $1 million, and, now it's August, and, she needs a bunch more. Why is that? We haven't budgeted for this. So I've seen this several times in my, career the last few years. And I don't know, this is why, when there's discussions that happen about cloud cost and cloud spend, I often see a lot of, I don't know, goofy guys who are just here's what we did. We changed this, and then we turned this knob, and then we did this knob, and here's how you can do it too. And then I'll talk with other people, women in the industry and people of color. They're like, well, yeah, we did this to begin with because you have to, because we can't blow up a budget. So that's what's going on right now. And I think it's really interesting, and nobody talks about it.
Well, I mean, to what you're describing, an element of, getting back to the heart of our show of tech bro culture, right? That, and it contributes to, on the one hand, as in all issues with minorities, it contributes to them, women and people of color, going in with a higher bar for their work often, which can make them superior candidates. But I've seen also cultures of, enormous stress and anxiety, that you don't have that same bandwidth to experiment, maybe take risks, and ultimately that involves some error, because of you're not part of that inner circle.
That's another thing. It's funny you mentioned the word experimentation, because that comes up in the data world and technically, all right, we're gonna go run some experiments. Okay, on what? All right, we're gonna do this, blah blah blah, and then it comes back and, hey, we found this thing over here that does this, this, and that, and blah blah blah. And we burned $200,000 in Google Cloud to figure that out or whatever. And we didn't ask for permission. We just did it. And, not everybody has that, I don't know, capability to do that. And
without leeway. So
leeway, right? Leeway is the right word, I think.
So, Petra, how have you, maybe you don't see it as a survival game. I see everything as a survival game. But how have you either thrived or survived, depending on how you see that reality that any woman, it sounds like, in a technical role, and certainly in the Netherlands, maybe is dealing with?
I never worked personally in budgeting and everything financial regarding the systems I worked on. So for me, it's a bit hard to have an opinion there. And also in the Netherlands, it's a bit harder to fire people. So also there, it's a bit hard to mention something in that area. But I did see that usually, nowadays we have DevOps and we have Agile. So I also wrote a blog about this. We used to have around 12 different roles to develop an IT product. Now you have one team of 5 people and they need to do everything. And there are some boring tasks and in which you don't learn almost anything. And what you usually see is that those kind of tasks are pushed towards the woman in the team, and they don't have the same option to grow or to learn in there and to learn. So they usually stagnate in a certain level for multiple years compared with their peers. This is what I observed in the teams I've worked with and among my friends which are working as in IT as developers.
And you've also put yourself out there publicly as a blogger. What initially was behind that? Was it hard to make that step of saying, like, I'm going to start publishing? And, did you fear feedback?
Not really, because I started with travel blogging when it was the hype to travel and to write about your travels. So I used to have an WordPress blog about it. And just 2 years ago or so, I just said, let me just start write an article on Medium. And then I just took off like that. It wasn't something planned. And I do not have a lot of readers, though, and I don't have a lot of comments. So I'm not in the situation in which I fear feedback. Of course, feedback is very welcome. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, sure. What makes this better, in your opinion? Like how, working in Western Europe, what are things that can be done to make this better?
We all need to become communists. Go back.
No, no, that's not a solution for sure.
Yeah.
No, what I think it's also
not the quick way here, right?
Regarding diversity, usually what you see companies, they do strive to be diverse and they do hire people, but unfortunately they do not work on the environment or the atmosphere they have inside the company. So if you hire someone and then you just let that person struggle, then it's an issue. Of course, that person at some point will leave. And also what I saw is that managers usually, maybe because they don't want to be confrontational, they do not address certain behaviors. So if they see that a certain person is not not acting nice with another person, usually that kind of behavior is not addressed. So usually people will just accept the situation until they will find another job and they will just leave that job. So I think addressing by managers certain behaviors and being there for people who do not feel welcomed in the teams, maybe it is a first step to do in order to be more inclusive in a company.
Sure. I would also say that, like, I don't know how this game works in Europe necessarily, but in the US, businesses have more rights than people. So one great way to, if you're thinking about avoiding any of this or mitigating it, is to just make yourself a business and make, Mary Consulting Incorporated LLC, or make Lauren Incorporated LLC.
Everyone should always have an LLC, no matter what. Yeah.
Because businesses have more rights than people in our country. And all you have to do is, depending on what state you live in, I don't know, it could be $100 up to $1,000. do your paperwork and take, walk through ABC, the steps. And then if you want to start your own little firm, you can start your own little firm. And then you actually have more rights than if you're an employee. So that could be a step. Definitely what I did 3 years ago and grown my business since then. But we also have Fred here who has a comment, and Fred says, Petra, in your mentoring of children, do you see differences in the children you teach and signs of the male versus female stereotypes in teaching them coding?
Good question.
I was a volunteer 2 years ago for 1 year. I taught Scratch to kids online. They were in Romania from mixed cities, in fact, villages. The idea of the classes was to mix people from different social backgrounds and like kids, in fact, and to teach them. What I saw was that usually girls are a bit more shy. They do not jump in answering questions, and they usually stay a bit in the back. So they don't want to be in the front compared with the boys. That's the only thing I observed.
And that would be quite, what age group are we talking that sort of behavior starts? Like 8 or?
I had 3 groups, 2 groups around 10 years and 1 group around 14 years, if I'm not mistaken, but it was general across them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's from the reading I've done, that except in China, that tends to be the case, just in terms of how we're all socialized. That's why I was very lucky to put my daughter in an all-girls school that's STEM focused, to kind of work against the culture of women and girls not putting themselves forward, period, in academic and technical settings. And then specifically when it comes to math, science, or coding or whatever, it's hard to fight against. Lauren's about to crack a joke here.
I don't have a joke. I'm just like, I mean, I was at like a Women in Data conference or a meeting last month or so in New York. And, there's like some 24, 25-year-olds there asking me for career advice. And I was like, just put yourself out there. Like what's out there right now from a content perspective is all bullshit. So if you just go out there and I don't know if it could be a blog or a website or whatever, and you're like, here's the problem, here's what I did, A, B, C, show your work. I don't know if you want to back it up your code in GitHub or something, you do it there. And, make a little project and just walk through the problem. And you are at the 98th percentile just by doing that. Because all this content out there, I'm going to throw a jab out here. Like one of my favorites in the last 2 weeks, I've challenged him to a duel. I will duel him.
Which of the people you've challenged to a duel?
Mr. Tatus over at High Touch and that crew. The modern data stack is the greatest. Oh, we have a composable CDP. Oh, now the CDP is this, and it's just like content, and throwing it out there and seeing what sticks. And it's all just confusing people. It's all nonsense, and it's all like this, like the idea of this bravado of just throwing stuff out there and just throwing as many footballs or baseballs or I don't know, cricket, whatever balls out there and seeing what sticks is all nonsense. And it doesn't make the market better. It doesn't make people smarter. You just confuse people. And then, everyone, hits like, retweet, share, because like, I don't know, they have business with that company and then it makes that spread. So
I posted about that this morning, and I've reined in my posting a little bit, not because I was doing that, but because it like physically makes me sick to be surrounded by that type of content. And a full week in Vegas at the Snowflake conference, in terms of the vendors who were there, that's all you're hearing is the Jupiter, who chimed in here, said it's fluff. I call it candy, and like it's like you've eaten candy for 3 days and like you can't take anymore, and then you crave the real stuff. Like I just want someone to tell me about a tool or a process or a service. I'd rather hear you sell it to me than hear the nonsense or like a cute little video with a nice side effect, or I'm calling out a company I like. I'm not going to say their name, but everybody knows, or a flash mob dance in Vegas. Like, I don't want to see it or hear it.
I saw the flash mob.
And I like that company, but like that does not teach me anything. It certainly doesn't make me buy a product. That's okay. I'm not your potential customer, but like teach me something about what you do. Like this data is great. Data, that's like why most of us are here. You can talk about the technical intricacies and what you can do with data for hours on end, days on end. We don't need all that fluff or candy, right?
But here's why it all exists. And so there are too many data companies and tech companies and I don't know, people building a little wrapper on some AWS service that does a thing out there. There's way too many of these out there. And the reason there's too many of these, and there's like 3 of every category. The reason there's so many of these is because all this Gulf oil money has to go somewhere. And so then they fund these companies through these venture capital firms. And, you know, they run it for 2 or 3 years. They put in $100 million. They get $3 million revenue back off of it, annualized at a 10x multiple. That's $30 million. I mean, debatably, like I don't know if 3 million is enough to justify a 10x, but you know, my point is that these are so inefficient, these machines, and this is what is making all the content out there. Content, and like the worst. I don't care. Like, I mean, I burn enough bridges, but I burn bridges with people who aren't going to be around in the industry in 2 years, or they'll be doing something else. Like Airbyte. Airbyte is the biggest content mill I've ever seen in my life. And you can go use the product. And I think they've had 2 years to build a product. And some of their stuff is okay. I will give them that. But they've spent millions and millions of dollars to get to where a bunch of other people already were 3 or 4 years ago. I don't think they make very much money at all. Like, I think they make in the single-digit millions, and they've spent way more than that to get there to make, I don't know, SingerTap integration. I don't know. Like, it's really funny to watch all this kind of play out. And I think here's an industry secret. Like, you know, I'll tell you, like, right, it's July 7th. Last week, there was Databricks conference, there's Snowflake conference. Then we've had a whole week this week. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not like, you know, playing myself down here. Like, I'm a big player in the industry here. A lot of salespeople were fired this week throughout the industry. And like a lot. Like, I don't like it more than I can count on my hands that I know that are around this industry. And I don't know, what does that say? Well, like, sales are so low. The TAM is so small around the data warehouse and around, you know, Databricks, data Snowflake, around.
It's an oversaturated market. Like, you don't need.
It's an oversaturated market. And so how do you differentiate? You make more content. And that's why you have High Touch is killing the data stack 1 week and then reviving it. And now it's levitating. Like, now it's Schrodinger's data stack, where if you look at the content, it's dead. But if you don't look at it, it's not dead. But it's only not dead because you saw some other content. I don't know. So we'll see what happens. Anyways, that's my rant. I'll shut up.
What's your take on all this? Again, Petrica,
what's your take on all this, Petrica?
The fact that you're buddies with Lauren shows me that you're very tuned into a lot of it. But obviously, you're in a different space than we are geographically, which influences the experience.
So I do read Lauren's Medium. I know she's also active on Twitter, but I do not have a Twitter account. So
none of us will pretty soon. So.
But it is true that we see a lot of content also around modern data stack. But sometimes I miss the effort you need to put into integrating all the tools you have there. And another point is, for example, I love the idea of data catalog and the open metadata standard. I open telemetry as well, so I do enjoy them. But on the other hand, I heard too often data analysts, business people, or even data scientists saying, write that SQL for me. So usually you put in a lot of effort to implement the tooling, to have data there, but the people who should use the tool will not use it. They will still go to the data team and ask, where is your data? Where can I find that? How can I query it? So I'm missing numbers which say how much those tools are really used inside the company and what is really the benefit, which is of which the companies had. I do miss this from all of the content I'm reading about.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is smoke and mirrors. Data catalogs, I think, are good. Like I don't. I mean, it depends on the company. Companies can use them properly. Companies can use them not properly, and like a lot of it is shelfware. Like industry secret, not really a secret. Everybody knows it. Probably a quarter to a third of data catalog revenue is someone signing and saying, we're going to use this because my boss is on me. So the vice president of data or something says, we're going to buy this. Then it gets bought. Maybe it's used for a couple of use cases. It's mostly shelfware. Other companies, they use it fully and they use it properly. But, in the valuation of what these companies are, a lot of it is smoke and mirrors, and that's true of a lot of the industry. So I don't know. It's interesting. Same with reverse ETL. That's a big dog and pony show. If anyone wants to fight me on that, come fight me on it, and we'll have a debate because I've seen multiple customers how little this stuff is used after it's bought. So whatever.
Petra, to you, what's your kind of pet peeve or the tool that you've seen most become shelfware?
Or like, what's the worst? Yeah,
what's the worst period? Yeah, maybe on the content angle even.
In fact, in the Netherlands, we don't use that much of the tooling you have in the modern data stack. Usually, companies will adopt all of the tooling around the data platform later on. And for example, if you look even at the data catalog, you do have the information schema. So even if you have a data warehouse or you have a data lakehouse, you do have somewhere where you have metadata about your data. It's just a SQL query you need to do on a certain table.
Right.
And there you can have all of your information. While I do agree that the data catalog provides more information than what you have in the metadata, but it is hard to really structure the data in such a way that is useful. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of boring work. Like people do not like to comment stuff. We invented Agile not to write documentation. So this is one thing. The other thing with reverse ETL, for me, maybe I misunderstood what the tool should be, but if you can get data in a data warehouse, you can also get it out. So I do not see the need of a reverse ETL. And we also speak about services around data warehousing. So if you look even in banking, for example, where we used to do risk classification of customers, that was happening in the data warehouse and it was sent back to the operational system to be used without having a dedicated tool for that. You just use the same tools. It's just the other way around. So
right.
I might misunderstand the use case when, yeah.
No, you're not misunderstanding anything. You're not misunderstanding anything.
It's a whole lot of marketing out of, what is it, Y Combinator and
yeah, whatever. It's all Saudi money. It's thrown into nonsense. I made a good tweet earlier this week. I don't want to be true Czech bro fashion. You bring up your tweets on your podcast, and then on your podcast, you put your Twitter and you just make a circle. No, I mentioned about how a lot of it's Persian Gulf money that makes these companies, and then when they fail, then the Chinese come in because their real estate market's about to collapse, and then they come in and they buy shares in the company afterwards. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this. I think everybody, like, if the past 2 or 3 years, everyone became like a mini engineer with like DBT and stuff, and they they learned what GitHub is, and they learned what version controlling is. That's good. I want everyone. My goal is to have all these people become mini like economists and mini like MBA students. I'd like look at like where their stuff's going. The same with reading your terms and conditions of the contracts that you sign. I've been having these conversations on social media with a few people, and I, you know, I've been like, I'm not a lawyer, and you know, like, but like when you look through terms of what you're signing, you should be thinking about things, and then you know, go to a lawyer. And I think a lot of this bottoms up product led growth stuff, which has pretty unilateral terms for the vendor because they're just trying to get something in quick, is kind of going away. But anyways, Ale, I think Ale's in Denmark, says, my completely unscientific knowledge about data catalogs being used or not used says it's more than 20 to 30%. Probably. I'm being a little nice, I think. And then Fred asks, Petra, what's next for you? You've had great success. What's your next success?
So I started freelancing last year. I think, Lauren, maybe because of the same reasons. So basically, now I'm a freelancer in the Netherlands, and yeah, I'm enjoying it a lot. It's a lot of flexibility, and it gives me time to work more on my blogs on Medium. So yeah, next for me is to.
I assume a lot of people ask us about, you know, consulting in various roles. You were established enough that clients have just been coming to you.
In fact, an ex-colleague, he asked me if I want to work with him, so we work together on a project. But what we do, it's almost end-to-end for a startup. So we develop end-to-end almost everything, including infrastructure and web development plus analytics. So I enjoy it because it's a broad. There are broad things I can do, and not get bored with a certain type of task. So that's what I enjoy most freelancing, is that I can do multiple things.
And you don't have to worry about buying healthcare on the private market or anything crazy like that because you're in
they're in Europe.
In the Netherlands. so here it's a bit more chill than in the States from that regard.
Yeah, that's one of the advantages to the contractor or freelance life in Europe, right? Absolutely. We didn't get, as per usual lately, we didn't get all the questions or comments. Really nice to see a lot of both new and old viewers. Great turnout today. I think this means that people want the Tech Bros. 2 weeks off, and the people are coming back and forth. So
everyone's about to get their fix. I know.
Yeah. No candy here. All nutrients.
Right, all nutrients and whatever I'm drinking out of the skull.
Yes.
Not really sure what it is, to be honest with you.
I'm not sure we want to know. Yeah. Well, thanks for spending your Friday evening with us, Petra. This was great. You can come back anytime.
Thank you for the invite.
Not that it was a test. I made it sound like you passed a test. This was awesome. All right, great. So and we'll see everybody next Friday. I don't know who's on the calendar, but we'll
find somebody.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, and thanks for the great questions, everyone. Take care.
Thank you for the
invitation. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.